Have you ever had the feeling that you were meant for more financially, and yet you stayed where you were? Not because you didn't try, not because you didn't want it hard enough, and definitely not because you didn't know what to do. We live in a time where information, knowledge, and advice is everywhere. And yet, for so many people, nothing really changes. For years, I thought that for me, it meant I was bad with money, and I needed a better plan, more discipline, a different strategy, which is ironic because I hold a degree in economics and I spent decades as an accountant, so I understand numbers and I understand how money works. Well, at least in theory, right? And yet, one morning, I was sitting on the edge of my bed holding a bank statement, and my body felt sick. Not metaphorically, but physically sick. My chest tightened, my stomach knotted, and that familiar wave of anxiety washed over me again. What I couldn't understand was that on paper, my situation looked fine. Savings in the bank, bills paid, no debts, a pretty successful business. There was nothing in the numbers that could explain what my body was doing. So the numbers weren't the problem, I said. But that's when it hit me. The problem wasn't what I had, but what having it meant. Because money doesn't just change what you can buy. Money changes who you are allowing yourself to be, where you belong, how far you are allowing yourself to go. A few years earlier, I had lost my husband in a traffic accident, and with the baby on my lap, I rebuilt everything from scratch. Work, routine, survival. I had done what you're supposed to do. I had done everything right. And yet, when everything was finally in place, my body reacted as if I had crossed an invisible line. An invisible line between what I was allowed to have and who I was allowed to be. Have you ever felt that? When everything looks fine on the outside, but your body tells a different story. And sitting there with that bank statement in my hand, a question crossed my mind. What if the entire way we explain being bad with money is wrong? And that question didn't take me back to another spreadsheet or another strategy. It took me back to a cold afternoon in November, nearly 40 years earlier. A 7-year-old girl was standing in a shop holding a brand new toy. She had bought it with her own saved money. You know, those coins collected patiently over the time from her parents. She rushed home to show it to her mom. You could say how proud she was. Her mom instead looked at the toy with disgust and shouted, "Why on earth would you waste your money on that piece of crap?" The toy was taken from her hands and thrown in the bin. The girl was slapped and punished. And in that moment, something quietly settled inside that little girl without her even realizing it. In that moment, she learned that pride could cost her mom's love, that joy came with consequences, that having something of your own was dangerous. And money stopped being neutral. Having money became judgment. And years later, sitting on the edge of my bed, my body wasn't reacting to that bank statement. My body remembered the story of the 7-year-old me. It remembered what happens when you cross that line, what happens when you achieve something, what happens when you have something of your own. That was the moment I realized an important thing. I wasn't bad with money. I was subconsciously loyal to a memory. And once I saw that clearly in myself, I started seeing it everywhere. Through my work, I noticed the same pattern showing up in different forms. Because people don't just make mistakes or just take bad decisions. No. For example, if you are a business owner, it might look like this. One time, an important client suddenly goes away just before signing the contract, and you lose money. Another time, a significant invoice doesn't get paid, and of course, you lose money. Another time, a key employee leaves right in the middle of a project, the project gets delayed, or even worse, cancelled. And what happens? You lose money. You might say different situations. Yes, but on the surface. Underneath, it's the same thing. Each time it takes you back to the same inner position, to the same identity, to the same familiar way of how you learned to be in the world. The details change, but the feeling doesn't. And if you really look, it doesn't stop to just business. The same patterns appear in your relationships, your family role, social dynamics, your lifestyle, your parenting. The pattern stays the same because the way you learned to do one thing, you do everything. Every single person I worked with was subconsciously loyal to an old pattern. And this is what I like to call emotional loyalty. And by the way, by loyalty, I don't mean virtue. I mean survival. Emotional loyalty isn't mindset. It isn't motivation. It isn't something you fix with more knowledge, more willpower, or another skill. It is that subconscious need for safety, belonging, and love. As children, we learn very early what keeps us connected to the loved ones and what risks us being left alone. We learn who we need to be to belong, what versions of us are safe, and which ones are not. And that learning doesn't disappear when you grow up. When you grow up, this finds new places to express itself, and money happens to be one of those places because numbers don't lie. They just leave a paper trail in your bank statement, in your credit card bill, in the savings account that never grows, in the investment you keep postponing, in the profit and loss account that tells a story you don't want to read, in the invoice you didn't send, in the salary you don't negotiate, in the bonus you downplayed, in the budget you avoid opening. Money leaves evidence. Brain imaging has revealed that when a person takes a decision about money, certain areas of the brain linked to subconscious emotions are activated. We like to believe we are rational with money, but we are not. And most economic models assume that humans calmly weigh up options, costs here, benefits there, and then we draw a line and choose what's best for us. Except real life doesn't happen like this. If it did, none of us would stay stuck in patterns we clearly see aren't working and accept at the same time. Even in my work, I noticed that 9 out of 10 financial decisions aren't actually ours, even if we like to admit it or not, even when they feel logical. They are driven by something older than logic, older than strategy, older than conscious choice. That's when it became very clear to me that most of us aren't afraid of being broke. We are afraid of who we might become if we had more money. Afraid of outgrowing the people we love. Afraid of standing apart. Afraid of crossing that invisible line that we were never meant to cross and which is very, very rarely spoken about. So, no, we don't manage money. We manage these loyalties and our subconscious attachment to them. And when strategies ask us to cross that line, to budget, to invest, to earn more, to stop overspending, to basically step out of the familiar roles, what do? We hesitate. Not because we don't know how, but because crossing that line feels like leaving someone behind. That's why raising your fees or asking for a raise isn't low confidence. It's loyalty to a familiar pattern. That's why overspending isn't lack of discipline. It's loyalty to a familiar pattern. That's why avoiding decisions isn't fear of failure. It's loyalty to a familiar pattern. And I can keep going on and on like this. We call this money problems, but they are not. They are subconscious emotional patterns we are very loyal to. So my message today isn't like any other message you find online nowadays, go and fix your finances. My message is to get honest about what your finances are protecting you from. What or who are you still being loyal to, and what is that loyalty costing you? Because when you finally see it, you don't just change how you earn, keep, act, invest, spend. You change what you believe you are allowed to have. And when that loyalty becomes conscious, the weight just drops. But until that loyalty becomes conscious, the subconscious pattern keeps repeating again and again just to keep you where it once felt safe. But the moment you see that, money stops being the enemy. It becomes feedback. I saw it in myself, I felt it myself, and I saw it again and again in the people I work with. Not because life suddenly gets easy, but because you stop living inside an identity that no longer fits who you are today. Yes, awareness is power, but that itself doesn't force change. Awareness instead gives you a choice, and that choice is the moment you stop believing you are bad with money, and the moment your real financial freedom begins. Thank you.